We received a comment on the channel that stopped everything. A viewer wrote the following: civilian freighters are flying military cargo through airspace that is closed to the US Air Force. We read this and our first reaction was skepticism. Then we started researching, and what we found deserves serious attention. The documents pointed to one specific aircraft. In every activation, in every classified logistics study we could find, it was always the same airplane. The Boeing 747 freighter. The problem, this aircraft is no longer in production. There's no replacement, and that is raising concerns not just in the logistics industry, but inside the Pentagon, which still cannot operate without it. And the problem is far bigger than most people realize. We just hit 30,000 subscribers. Thank you all so much, and don't forget to subscribe for more aviation videos. Berlin, 1948. The Soviet Union blocks all ground access to the western part of the city. More than 2 million civilians are isolated. No food, no fuel, no medicine. The United States and United Kingdom decide to do the impossible: resupply an entire city by air. The operation works, but it exposes a dangerous problem. To sustain the Berlin airlift, the Americans had to commandeer commercial aircraft with no planning, no contracts, no structure. President Truman learns the lesson: the United States can never be caught unprepared again. And on December 15, 1951, the Civil Reserve Air Fleet is born. Most people have no idea how dependent the Pentagon is on civilian aviation, but the numbers are staggering. According to public doctrine from the United States Transportation Command, in a full mobilization, approximately 95% of all deployed troops travel on civilian aircraft, not military transports, commercial planes. CRAF is the system that makes this possible, in agreement between the Department of Defense and civilian airlines. The incentive is elegant. Airlines commit aircraft in exchange for exclusive access to military transport contracts worth more than $2.6 billion per year. If you don't participate, you don't compete for that money. The result is that every major American carrier participates: American Airlines, Delta, United, FedEx, UPS, Atlas Air, Kalitta, even JetBlue. The system operates in 3 activation stages. In the smallest crisis, aircraft are ready in 24 hours. In full mobilization, 48 hours. And it requires a presidential order. In 75 years, CRAF has been activated only 3 times: Desert Storm, 1990, Iraqi Freedom, 2003, and Kabul, 2021, the largest air evacuation in history. 124,000 people evacuated in just a few days, and in every single one of those activations, one aircraft showed up more than any other. Now here is where the story turns. Because CRAF is not just about how many aircraft you have, it is about what those aircraft can carry. And to understand why the Pentagon has always depended on one specific airplane, you need to understand 3 things about the Boeing 747 freighter. The first is the nose. The entire nose of the 747 lifts up. When it opens, it creates a straight, unobstructed passage, more than 12 meters long, 3 meters wide, no angles, no complicated ramps. No other commercial aircraft in production has ever had this. The second is what fits inside. Military helicopters no other commercial aircraft can carry. Turbine components for F-16 and F-35 fighters, more than 10 meters long, Patriot missile parts, military satellites, Stryker armored vehicles, industrial generators for forward bases in the middle of the desert. Now, hold on, the C-17 and the C-5 exist for exactly this purpose as well. They are military cargo aircraft designed to move heavy equipment. but the United States has 222 C-17s and 52 C-5s in its entire fleet. In a full mobilization, those aircraft are all allocated to priority tactical missions, direct projection into combat zones where civilian aircraft cannot go. The long-distance logistical volume, moving troops, parts, and supplies from the continental U.S. to intermediate staging bases, is far too large for the military fleet alone. That is why CRAF exists, and among civilian aircraft, only the 747 freighter carries what the C-17 carries. The third thing is the most subtle, and perhaps the most important. The 747 doesn't look military. It lands at commercial airports, operates with civilian crew, flies into countries that categorically refuse access to American Air Force C-17s and C-5s. This is exactly what that viewer described in the comment: civilian aircraft carrying military equipment through airspace politically closed to the United States. Atlas Air operates 65 Boeing 747s, 47 of the 400 variant, and 17 of the 8 variant. It is the largest operator of the type in the world, and it is the Pentagon's primary strategic cargo contractor. FedEx committed 78 widebodies to CRAF, 100% of its eligible fleet. During Desert Storm, FedEx alone transported more than 1/3 of all mobilized civilian cargo. Aircraft like the 777 and the MD-11 were the workhorses of that effort. Another major cargo carrier participating in these mobilizations is UPS, with its fleet of 747-400s. The 747 freighter is not just another aircraft in CRAF. It is the most critical strategic asset in the system. And that is why what happened on January 31st, 2023 matters so much. Everett, Washington, January 31st, 2023. The last 747 in history rolls off the Boeing assembly line. The aircraft carries a special decal, a tribute to Joe Sutter, the chief engineer who designed the 747 in the 1960s, father of the Jumbo. Veterans of the original program, the group known as the Incredibles, are at the ceremony, the ones still alive. 1,574 units produced over 54 years, and the buyer of the final aircraft? Atlas Air, the same company that flies the Pentagon's most sensitive cargo missions around the world. The line is closed, and here is the problem. No aircraft currently in production fully replaces the 747 freighter. The Boeing 777-8 freighter, Boeing's next-generation cargo aircraft, is delayed until 2028, and even when it arrives, it has no front loading door. The nose does not open. The A350 freighter, the European competitor, is scheduled for 2027. Also no front loading door. Also no ability to carry oversized cargo through the front. The commercial replacement is coming. The capability replacement is not. Now the number that puts everything in perspective. In 2014, CRAF had 391 long-range widebodies committed to the program. By 2024, that number had fallen to 258, a drop of 34% in a single decade. And the Pentagon's own classified study, the Mobility Capabilities and Requirements Study, or MCRS, establishes the absolute minimum floor at 256 widebody equivalents. The United States is 2 aircraft away from falling below its own military doctrine for strategic airlift. The capability is quietly shrinking. Airlines are consolidating. New orders are for smaller, more efficient aircraft optimized for e-commerce and regional routes, not for moving oversized military cargo across oceans. And the aircraft that anchored this entire system for half a century is no longer being manufactured. December 2025. The United States government purchases 2 used Boeing 747-8s from Lufthansa. The price? $400 million. The official justification is technical: crew training and spare parts for the VC-25B program, the future Air Force One. And that explanation is plausible, but consider what it signals. Only 3 airlines in the world still operate the 747-8 passenger variant: Lufthansa, Korean Air, and Air China. 3 on the entire planet, and the United States is buying used ones, paying $200 million per aircraft with more than a decade of flight time. Whether for Air Force One support or broader strategic reasons, the purchase tells the same story. The 747 still matters, enough for the US government to hunt for them on the second-hand market. And that leads to the geopolitical contrast that makes all of this strategically significant. March 2026, Atlas Air, the largest 747 operator on Earth, the Pentagon's primary cargo contractor, announces something unprecedented in 32 years of history: a firm order of 20 A350 freighters, $4.6 billion under contract. Atlas Air has been exclusively Boeing since 1992. CEO Michael Steen publicly signals the fleet transition, as we covered in a previous video. The Pentagon's most important civilian partner is moving to a European aircraft, an aircraft that cannot do what the 747 does. Now look at the other side. October 2025, Air China Cargo orders 10 A350 freighters, $4.65 billion. The United States and China buying the same aircraft from the same factory in the same period, but only the United States depends on a civilian fleet to project military force globally. China does not need a CRAF because in 2016, Beijing approved the National Defense Transportation Law. The law is simple. The Communist Party can requisition any Chinese civilian aircraft for military use at any moment, for any reason. No voluntary program, no financial incentives, no staged activation, no presidential declaration, no negotiation. One order, and the aircraft is military.
Air China, China Eastern, China Southern, Hainan Airlines, SF Express, Alibaba's Kaineo. All of them, no exceptions. Think about the contrast. The United States built CRAF over 75 years with billions of dollars in contracts and decades of cooperative doctrine. China achieves the same capacity with a one-page decree. And meanwhile, the Chinese military airlift fleet is expanding rapidly. The Xi'an Y-100, China's strategic transport, the conceptual equivalent of the American C-17, represented 0% of the global fleet in that category in 2014. The projection for 2030 is 18%. Dual expansion, their own military fleet growing in the legal capacity to requisition all civil aviation, instant and total. In the United States, the civilian widebody fleet is shrinking. The irreplaceable aircraft is gone from production, and no one is publicly debating what happens when the fleet falls below the minimum. What does mobilization look like in 20 years when these aircraft are gone? Will the government start buying back retired 747s and spending billions to give old airframes a second life, where the presidential aircraft itself has been overdue for replacement for years? The question hangs in the air. The remaining fleet will fly for 15, maybe 20 more years, and when the last 747 freighter lands for the final time, it will take with it a logistics capability that the United States may not recover. Not because the Pentagon failed to plan, but because no one, not Boeing, not Airbus, no one is building the aircraft that replaces what the 747 uniquely does. The erosion of this capability could become strategically significant, and the question is whether anyone acts before the fleet reaches a point of no return. What do you think? Does the Pentagon have a real plan to replace the 747 freighter, or is a critical piece of American logistics quietly disappearing while the world looks the other way? Leave your answer below. We read every comment, and it was a comment that started this entire investigation. See you over there.